In policy and electoral terms, the anti-Bush movement was a failure. In the 2004 election, the Bush administration's heinous actions failed to be electorally repudiated due to the loss of John Kerry, which was due to the success of the Bush campaign's coordinated smears. And when Obama was elected, all that happened was the Bush foreign policies got transferred over to another administration, which has subsequently happened with the Trump and Biden administrations. Yet, in terms of the historical narrative about the nature of the United States and its role in the world, the anti-Bush movement has been a success, both in the United States and worldwide. The protests against the Iraq War were some of the biggest anti-war protests in history, and they were global. This means that great sentiment against the United States, exposing the United States for its vile nature and the war crimes that it regularly commits, were spread across the globe, and I feel like many global governments have heard the call of those protesters, even though, of course, America's government did not. And I say this because 20 years later, as the US is waging a proxy war against Russia, the majority of the globe, particularly the global south, has refused to sign on to Washington's calls for joining in on the sanctions against Russia. Most of the world views the US as a hypocritical actor due to what the United States did in both Afghanistan and Iraq 2 decades ago. And in terms of US discourse, well, of course, our media and our online censorship machine has worked to suppress US warmongering, US war crimes since then. But the exposing of Washington's crimes during the War on Terror, the first years of the War on Terror, has produced multiple generations of people who are dedicated to exposing the further crimes of the U.S. empire. I remember the great anti-imperialist journalist Abby Martin said on one of her Joe Rogan podcast appearances that her initial introduction to the crimes of the United States came in the form of learning about the evils of the Bush administration during her youth. And she explained that initially it seemed like it was just the Bush administration doing these things, but as she learned more, it became apparent to her just how bipartisan, how insidious, how expansive, how fundamental war crimes are to the functionings of the U.S. government. And now we're 20 years out from these series of atrocities, and now we have people like me, and I'm sure many, many others, who are looking at what was done, and we're concluding also that the U.S. empire is the world's greatest source of evil, and it absolutely needs to be defeated. Defeating U.S. imperialism is paramount. And a big part of why we've come to this conclusion is because we saw the lies, we've examined the lies that our government told 2 decades ago, and that showed us quite dramatically that our government lies all the time in order to make excuses for waging war on behalf of capital. I suspect that 20 years from now, the actions of the Bush administration are still going to be inspiring sentiments like this.